You have finished writing a feature screenplay. That's an amazing accomplishment. You've set yourself apart from many millions of dreamers, most of whom will never do what you just did. Then again, you're still one of several 100,000, maybe even more than that. So what do you do next?
What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
I'm Nathan Graham Davis. I'm a Hollywood screenwriter living in Massachusetts, and this is Class 15, the final class of Delusional, a one-of-a-kind screenwriting course that I'm not charging a thing for. I write screenplays for a living, and that's a dream come true, and this is me paying it forward. Because of what newer writers tend to search for on YouTube, there's a pretty good shot that this is the first video you've seen from this series, but there's a reason that I left it for last. We writers tend to be dreamers. That's why this class is titled Delusional. In addition to our stories, it's super normal to dream about the things that we might do with what we've written, and so it's easy to be attracted to any tips or information in that space. But tips on how to break in or get your movie made are useless if you haven't written something great. So if this dream really matters to you and you don't have that great script yet, my recommendation is to go check out Class 0, where you can find out more about this course and see if it's for you. To those of you who've been following along for the last 3 months or so, let's recap what you've just achieved. You formed a writing group. You wrote a short screenplay with no dialogue. You've read at least 12 scripts, and you've reread at least one of those with new insights in mind. You've read columns and watched other videos from some extremely successful and knowledgeable screenwriters. You generated 10 movie ideas. You wrote a one-pager for one of those. You've written an outline. You traded it for feedback. You revised it. You've reached out to try and set up coffees or phone calls or Zooms, and there's a pretty good shot that you were successful in this. And if you're not finished already, you are just about done with a feature screenplay. That is a lot to do in 3 months. And if you've done all of those things, or even if you've only done like 80 or 90% of them, that gives you a really strong foundation. Now my hope is that you're going to rest for just a little bit and then dive back in and tackle some rewrites to get your script into the best shape possible. But after you've done that, almost certainly you're going to be wondering what's next. We write these things to reach an audience, so let's talk about that. I started this course with William Goldman's famous quote, and it seems fitting to end with it as well: nobody knows anything. That's true when it comes to writing, and frankly, it's true when it comes to the business. That's not to say that there aren't some really smart people in this business. There are definitely a lot of them. But when it comes to breaking in, everybody's got a different path. And when it comes to what audiences want, they constantly surprise us. Things that seem like surefire hits will bomb. Others will become wild successes out of nowhere and prompt a mad rush to try and capitalize on whatever the new trend is. The information here is based on my own experiences or the experiences of people who I know. It's fairly educated, but also it's anecdotal and nobody knows anything, and that absolutely includes me. Sometimes your gut may tell you to do something that's against the grain, and sometimes your gut might be right. So just like everybody has a different path to breaking in, every movie has a different path to getting made. Some of those stories are wild, but things do happen in some kind of order, and that should at least give you a sense of direction. I'm going to start here with the world of very low budget movies, but don't skip ahead because some of this will apply to pretty much any budget. For very low budget movies, let's say, roughly below the $2 million range, you have a key difference. If your movie falls into this range, get prepared to try a lot of things and send a lot of emails and likely meet a lot of people because it's going to be on you to get the ball rolling. There are plenty of people and places making movies in this range, from Hallmark to indie producers to wealthy people who've always dreamed of producing a movie someday. Distribution can be tricky, but even so, there is an opportunity to actually get the thing made, and probably more opportunity than within the Hollywood system. That said, managers and agents almost never sign a writer off of material in this range, nor do they invest time into sending those scripts out, and there are a few reasons for this. One, writers make almost nothing off of these movies. If you get a really good deal as a new writer, you might get 3% of the budget, and that's like very good. So on $1 million movie, that rare, very good scenario is 30 grand. And yes, that's real money, but you don't get most of it until the movie gets made, and most movies don't get made. You'll be lucky to get $1,000 up front as an option fee. So at a commission of 10%, that's $100 for the manager who helped make that happen. Even if the movie gets made, very few writers get a movie made every year, let alone multiple movies. In other words, you are not making a living off of this budget level, and the manager is doing even worse. Quality reps, the kind that you want to work with, have clients who do way better than that. There are much better uses of their time. Also, a lower budget script rarely works as a sample for a higher budget assignment, and assignments are a big part of how writers make a living. These might include rewrites, adaptations of books, that kind of thing, and the executives and producers who hire writers are staking their jobs on those decisions. They need to be convinced that you can deliver in a way that will attract meaningful directors and stars. So again, if that very low budget script can't work as a sample, that's another reason that reps won't be interested. So if you've written a very low budget script, you're skipping right over representation and you're going directly to the source. You're going to try and get your work read by the people who actually make these movies, the producers and the executives. To do this, you're definitely going to want a subscription to IMDb Pro. That's where you're going to find their email addresses. But how do you find out who these people even are? Well, it's not actually that hard. You just make a list of movies in that genre and budget range. Some basic Googling will get you there. You could also try putting out a question on social media. Like if you went on a Reddit about movies or filmmaking and you just asked, what are your favorite dramas made for less than 2 million since 2015? You'll probably get some pretty great answers. You can use ChatGPT to come up with a list of things like that too. No, I would never recommend using AI to write because that's only going to lead to something that's mediocre, and I also think there's a pretty big ethical problem there, but it's a great tool for data. It's not going to be perfectly accurate, but if you tell it to give you movies made since a certain date in your genre and budget range, it should do pretty well. Once you have your list, however you generated it, just look for those movies on IMDb Pro. Check out the companies behind them and reach out to the executives or the producers at those companies. You may be tempted to try emailing directors or actors as well, and it makes sense. Getting a notable filmmaker or a star on board can be huge when it comes to getting financing. But you'll notice that most of them don't actually list their own contact info and instead just list the reps. And here's the thing, these people get offers all the time, and if you don't already have money, their reps will typically gatekeep you. There are two things that can be worth trying though. First, some of these directors and actors have their own production companies. Those production companies often have assistants and lower level executives who are open to reading things. That info probably will be on IMDb Pro, so you can always try them. And of course, as I said in an earlier class, referrals trump everything. If you have a good contact who knows one of these people, there might be a good opportunity there. And that's why meeting people and continuing to meet people is so important. But most likely at the low budget level, you are emailing producers and executives. So email a bunch of them. In a perfect world, some of them read it and one or two love the material so much that they want to make it. They attach a director and a star, they pay for the script, they shoot it, and you have a produced movie within a couple years. What should you expect in terms of pay? Again, not a lot. And most likely they'll pay you very little or even nothing until they begin production. There will probably be some sort of contract though. At this stage, it'll either be an option or more likely a shopping agreement, so let's talk about those things. First things first, once you are talking about signing a document that gives somebody some sort of rights to your work, you absolutely always, without question, must engage an attorney. And not your cousin who does divorces either. You need an entertainment attorney who is steeped in the world of making movies. This, unfortunately, is another downside of the low budget world. If you're making decent money, let's say north of $50,000 on a contract, you can usually sign with an attorney who will do all your legal work in exchange for 5% of your income. That's a great situation because you pay nothing up front and you now have somebody on your team.
Cool, we're a team.
At lower budgets where 5% doesn't actually add up to too much, you can expect to pay several hundred to a couple thousand per contract, and that's a lot. If you're in a really tight spot, you can save some money by asking an attorney to simply look over a document and give you a consultation, but that's not ideal. A good entertainment attorney can help you negotiate a much better deal than you could negotiate yourself. This goes way beyond money, and it includes all sorts of provisions like the right to write a sequel, TV rights, and things like that. But regardless of what you do, do not skip over that attorney step. I've seen way too many writers get screwed that way. But since you are not going to skip that step, let's talk about a couple contracts that attorneys are likely to help you with. An option is simply a contract that gives the company the option to buy your script within a set period of time, usually 12 to 18 months. During this time, you can't sell it to anyone else and they pretty much control the rights. For this privilege, you get paid something up front. The option agreement also lays out the terms of the purchase, so in that option agreement, you know how much you'll be paid if they buy the script. Any bonuses for production or getting sole credit on the movie, those things will also be included. Any backend will be included. Guaranteed fees for rewrites may be included. Oftentimes, in the low budget worlds, you get none of these things, but again, a good attorney might be able to help you get some of them. In the low budget world, that upfront option fee could be, and often is, as low as $1. I recommend against agreeing to dollar options. If somebody is serious about making your movie, they should be able to give you something. See if you can get at least 1,000. In my opinion, anything under a few hundred means they have zero skin in the game and it's not a partnership worth being in. Options in the $2 to $5 million range are often the same situation, although they can be a little bit better, and they often improve as budgets get higher. As a non-guild writer, the most I've ever been paid for an option is $7,500, and the most I've ever seen another non-guild writer get is $15,000. But that's super rare. For a non-guild writer, an option fee above $5,000 is considered really good. Sometimes in that budget range, if you have good reps and a little luck with the buyer, you can get a WGA contract. Once it becomes guild, that option fee becomes at least 10% of the purchase price. Guild agreements also have lots of things that are built in that are excellent for writers, which is why most of us want to get into the WGA. So although you often won't get in on your first movie, just like I didn't, you absolutely should try. If you can get that WGA agreement, you're going to be really glad you did. As far as purchase prices go, there's a big range, but 2 to 3% of the budget is pretty common. Newer writers often get less, and it's rare for a writer to see more unless they're really established. And even then, it's not going to be by much. Outright sales are rare though. A lot of times you'll hear people say that a script was sold when it was actually just an option. Similarly, you might hear somebody refer to getting a 6-figure deal, but again, it's usually just an option and the bulk of that money hasn't yet been paid. It's not a sale until that purchase price has been exercised. Since most options don't turn into sales, that's why it's important to get some pay up front. They're tying up your rights for that option period, and as much as you might like these people, odds are against the movie getting made. But here's the silver lining. After the option ends, all rights revert back to you and you get to try again. And you get to keep whatever they paid you. In those wonderful scenarios where the script is actually purchased, it's usually because production has begun. The company is now investing millions of dollars into the movie and needs to ensure that they own the rights for real. So most contracts say that they will pay the writer the purchase price on the first day of principal photography. Shopping agreements are more and more common these days, especially in lower budget ranges. These agreements attach a producer and give them the exclusive rights to shop the material to directors, actors, financiers, etc. Usually the time limit is something like 6 to 12 months, and then it can be renewed if both parties agree. You do not get paid for these. I'm just going to say it, shopping agreements are less exciting than options, and they benefit the producers more than they benefit you. You're the one who did the lion's share of the work at this stage, and the producer is now contractually attached to it, and they've paid you nothing for the privilege. That doesn't mean that you should never sign them though. If the producer is actually capable of getting your movie made, like they have a resume that proves it, that is meaningful and their attachment is an important step in this process. Also, producers have fewer rights with shopping agreements, so you get to be a little bit more involved in the decision making. For instance, if they want a director for a project and you don't feel they're a good fit, you can say so. With an option, the rights are now theirs, at least temporarily, and they can make whatever decisions they like. Also, if you're unhappy with the producers, you can just end it after the shopping agreement expires. They don't have an automatic right to renew or make a purchase. So again, you have a little bit more freedom here. Major producers with A-list connections often don't use any agreement. An informal handshake agreement is good enough for them because they know how much their attachment means and that you're unlikely to walk because of it. But for everybody else, they're pretty common, so it's worth recognizing that they're a normal part of the business. With scripts that are a little higher budget and above, the basic flow from script to movie is pretty much the same as with low budget. A producer typically brings in a director, then a star, and then a financer or studio. Sometimes they'll also partner with another production company that will have its own connections and capabilities, and sometimes that company actually belongs to the director or the star who they bring in. Also, although it's common for lower budget material as well, it's definitely true once budgets get bigger. You should expect to do a new rewrite pretty much every time one of these major attachments comes on board. Everybody has opinions, and that's the collaborative nature of filmmaking, so be prepared for it, and hopefully you won't have to do too many rewrites for free. But that's all a bit cart before the horse. If you don't know them already and you don't have a referral, to get your foot in the door with these higher level producers and executives, you often need a rep to help you do that. This is going to be a manager or an agent, and for newer writers, 99% of the time, it's going to be a manager. The difference between agents and managers can be a little bit confusing, so let's talk about them for a minute. Agents are the powerhouse connectors of the industry. While everyone in the business needs to know people, agents need to know basically everyone. Their job is to sell your scripts and to get you paid to write assignments. Those at bigger agencies, which is where the majority of writers who have actual stable careers are set up, also have additional, incredibly powerful resources. One of those is information. More than anybody in the business, they know what's happening and what people want at any particular time. That's a really big deal if you're trying to get a job or sell something. Additionally, the biggest directors and stars are also at those agencies, and if your agent is colleagues with Timothée Chalamet's agent, it's that much easier to get him to consider your script. But agents don't do a whole lot of developing of either screenplays or writers, and they tend to focus on only the most high-profile projects. That means that they rarely sign writers who aren't already working and successful, and while most people would consider me to be working and at least a little bit successful, I still don't have an agent. Maybe that'll change by the time you watch this, but just as an example, my manager sent a recent spec script of mine to a close friend of his who's a top agent at one of the top agencies. He said he'd read my script because it was my manager who was sending it, but that he's not in the business of signing people who are making less than $1 million a year. $1 million a year. That's definitely not me. So that should give you an idea of when agents tend to enter the picture. Newer agents and agents at mid-sized agencies might be a little bit more open to new clients, but it's rare to sign with them before you have a rock-solid career. Managers, however, do sign newer writers, occasionally. Their job is much more about developing you and developing your material, so it makes sense. You get a manager before you get an agent. Developing your material means that they're pushing you to rewrite something until they feel they can help you get it sold. Developing you means that they push you to write new, better, and probably more marketable things. It also means that they introduce you to producers, executives, and more, sending out your work and getting you meetings with people who might actually be able to pay you. Just like with agents, to do their jobs well, they need to know a lot of people. Agents charge 10% of whatever you make. Managers are the same, usually. Some managers will charge 15% if you don't already have an agent, and it's not exactly a red flag, but it is atypical and it's kind of looked down upon. Many writers will tell you that a bad rep is worse than no rep. I actually agree with this. If you've got somebody who's giving you notes that aren't actually helping you improve, that's bad. If they're not getting your work out there, that's also bad. Landing that first manager feels like a massive deal, and after what is often years of hard work, you finally have somebody validating it by saying they believe in your writing so much that they think that both of you can get paid for it. And that's awesome. But if a manager can't or won't help you progress in your career, they're stalling out your progress and getting in the way of you working with somebody else who can. There are plenty of reps who just aren't well connected at all. There are some who just don't actually have that much hustle and they just sign people on the off chance that they might be able to make them some money. There are others who are actually excellent at what they do, but they have a large roster of clients and they spend most of their time with the people who are the most successful. And while that's kind of logical, it's a bad thing for the writers at the bottom of their priority list. Finally, there are great reps out there who just might not be a great fit for you. So even if it's a while before you get there, what you're looking for in a rep is somebody who's ultra passionate about your work, who's extremely well connected, and who actually has the time for you. And if they give you great notes on top of it, that's a beautiful thing. So how do you find these people? Getting reads is roughly the same whether you're going after reps, producers, executives, or otherwise. There are lots of different ways to make it happen, and ranked roughly in order, the effective ones include the following. Knowing someone is obviously the best and the easiest. If you're fortunate enough to know a rep who might be a good fit, that's a fantastic place to start. That's not going to be most of you though, so let's continue down the list. Meeting a rep through networking or just pure happenstance can also be effective. If you talk about what you're working on and they just happen to spark to the logline, they might ask to read it. But if they don't ask, it means they aren't interested, so don't put them in the position of having to say no. Referrals are the bread and butter of this industry. Knowing people who can refer you to the right person is everything, and this is why I've spent so much time talking about getting to know people. The top tier contests and services out there can be a very effective way for the few people who do well in them. They're also an easy way to spend a lot of money and get nothing in return, which is the case for 99% of the people who enter. I'll talk about those more in a second. Query letters can be effective. There are lots of people who just automatically delete them, but among those who don't, a great query might earn you a read. Finally, social media can be a great way to get reads if you use it effectively. It has a broader reach than many other methods, and it's also free, but there are downsides and you need to be aware of them. Every once in a while, somebody finds an unorthodox method of getting read. You have to be careful here. Going too far outside the box is more likely to just make you look crazy or desperate, which ensures you're never going to get a read from these people. So do be creative, but also proceed with caution. Going a little deeper, let's talk about screenwriting services. There are countless places online that will happily take your money in exchange for offering you the key to your dreams. Most of them have absolutely zero ability to deliver on that. Many are offering you things that you honestly don't even need. For instance, you should never pay for a meeting with an executive or a producer or a rep or otherwise. If you have a great script, they will happily meet you for free. That's a big part of their job, and I can tell you, these people are not taking these meetings to find the next great writer. They are taking them to make money. And for the most part, the people who are actually successful in this business have an endless slate of people who they need and want to meet with, and they're not going to sacrifice that time just to make a couple bucks. In most cases, writers shouldn't need to pay for feedback either. It can occasionally be helpful, but even then, you should only be paying for feedback from people who have real experience within the context of the actual industry. And those people are expensive. And by real experience, by the way, I mean more than being an intern or an assistant for a year. I'm talking about executives, producers, and writers with real, meaningful credits and work experience. Most of the people offering notes and reading for these services do not have that experience. And the reason for that is because these services are not the industry. They're adjacent to it. The list of services out there is going to grow and change over the years, so you need to be your own judge and do your own homework. They are all going to try and spin things and sell you hard, so it's your job to ask yourself, what is it that they're actually providing? What are the chances that it'll be of any value? And do they have the experience to deliver on that promise? Don't pay for advice or services from people who haven't had real and verifiable success themselves. There are a few services that I think are worthwhile, though. This may or may not be the case when you're watching this. Coverfly, for instance, just had a bunch of its affiliates close up shop. Hey everyone, it's Nate from the future here. I shot all of these videos for this course in like a 3-week block in February, so a few things have changed since then, and one of those is that Coverfly actually just closed, which kind of underscores this entire point. Currently, depending on where you're at in your career and what your financial position is, these things could be worth a look. The blacklist is a big part of why Aftermath got made, and if you do well there and have a great logline for a script in a marketable genre and budget range, you can get a ton of reads from people in the industry. That said, only 3% of scripts score the necessary 8 out of 10 or better to get on the map there. You still need that killer hook and logline, and even then, it's still kind of a long shot. Aftermath took off because it got that 8, it's in a marketable genre, it had a hooky logline, it's within a good budget range, and I announced that 8 all over social media. Also, even though the readers on the blacklist are experienced, they're human, and that means you're going to have to deal with subjectivity. They still have their own tastes and opinions. So even though the blacklist is definitely worth a try, it's not worth trying until you're ready because you could easily be throwing a couple $100s out the window even if you have a great script. Roadmap Writers offers courses and coaching that are well respected by a number of writers. I actually know a couple people at the top, including their CEO, and these are great people who are really in it to help writers succeed. And they've accomplished that at least to some degree. They've helped a number of writers get signed by managers and more. And I'll be perfectly honest here, because as much as I like them, this is not a paid ad. I think some of those managers provide more value than others. Some don't seem very connected or have a track record of success. But still, some of them are super legitimate, and a lot of those successes at Roadmap are absolutely real. That said, their programs are pricey, so make sure that you're ready for that investment if you use them. And also, I personally wouldn't pay for some of their services, such as meetings with executives, etc. Hey, it's Nate from the future again. I had a section here about Coverfly and the free services that they offered, but once again, they are no longer a thing. One of the best things that they offered was a free platform to host your scripts, and I recently learned that there's another platform that seems to do this pretty well. It's called Script Revolution, and you can put your scripts up there for free. There is a paid version. I'm not sure that's necessary. I'm also not sure that this is the type of place where, producers and reps are going to come looking for new scripts. But to be perfectly honest, Coverfly wasn't really that kind of thing either. What a platform like this does do is it gives you a convenient place to host your scripts, and then you can link to them on social media and things like that. And also the founder, CJ Wally, he's also a screenwriter, and he's got at least some professional experience, which first of all sets him apart from the vast majority of the services out there. But also I just get the sense that his heart is really in the right place in terms of why he created and runs this site. So that's pretty cool too. So if I were trying to break in right now, I would probably host a few scripts under the free version of that website. I just don't really see a downside. There are probably several hundred screenwriting contests out there, maybe thousands, and most of them are meaningless. No one in Hollywood cares, and they won't help you get reads even if you win them. If you're just looking for validation or a measuring stick of where you're at, that's fine. But in my opinion, because they're typically not cheap, it's only worth entering the ones that matter. Those are few and far between, and you should know that you're up against people who are writing at a professional or near professional level already, so shoot for the stars, but temper your expectations. When you're ready, the ones that I'm aware of that seem worthwhile are Nickel, Page, Script Pipeline, and Austin. There are a few others that have success stories too, but by that point you're already talking a few $100s per script per year. So when I was entering them, I would just limit it to a few that mattered. It's Nate from the future coming at you once again. The Nickel technically still exists, but recent changes have been made and it is much different. You can pretty much only enter if you go to one of a handful of film schools, or if you select that option through the Blacklist website and they get an exceptional score over there. So for most writers, entering the Nickel is unfortunately no longer an option. Because it was run by the Academy and typically did a great job of finding exceptional new writers, it used to be the most prestigious contest out there. It was a big enough deal that unlike almost any other contest, if you simply placed in the quarterfinals, you could include that kind of information in a query because it kind of set you apart from the rest. I expect that when they name their fellows for this year, it'll still be a big deal, but I wouldn't be shocked if that prestige dwindles just a little bit. But this really isn't the end of the world. Again, contests and services are a pretty limited pathway to break in, and most writers break in through referrals and things like that. Anyway, moving on. With Page, Script Pipeline, and Austin, you kind of need to be a finalist or outright win for it to matter. This means being in the top few out of what are often several thousand entries. And again, readers can't help but be subjective, so not only do you need to be amazing, you need to be a little bit lucky. But if you are, those contests can matter. You'll get read by real managers and real producers, and people do tend to get signed and land options as a result of those every year. With query letters, you can often find the email addresses for managers right on IMDb Pro. If I had a close-knit writing group, as I hope you do by now, I might create a shared spreadsheet and work together to build a database, because you're gonna want to send a lot of emails. Keep your email short and snappy. The point of your query letter is your logline. It needs to hook people right away or your email will be deleted. But if you can hook someone, you might just get a request. I recommend keeping queries to 3 quick paragraphs. First up, a quick intro letting them know why you're emailing them. This should be personalized to them so that they know it's not just a mass email. Next, probably in italic or even bold, should be your title, your genre, and your logline. Finally, a quick closing paragraph that sums up a bit about who you are as a writer. If you have a fascinating background, and especially if it relates to your script, share that here. If you've had a major contest placement or a successful short film or something similar, share that here too. Then you thank them and you get out. Really important, never send an attachment with your query. You always want to wait until they request the script. If you send an attachment with that email, it's gonna get deleted. Social media is great if you use it effectively. That means using it to connect with people in a real and meaningful way, establishing an online brand as the kind of person people want to work with, and occasionally updating people on what you're doing. If you've had some kind of big win, whether a literal win in a contest, or an 8 on the blacklist, or a signed contract, or a short film that's taking off, that's totally worth announcing. People pay attention to that kind of thing. That said, you can hurt yourself if you come off as cynical or desperate. Suddenly, you risk becoming a writer that people want to avoid. You can also be too active and come across like you don't do any real writing. That's something I've been guilty of in the past, and it's one of the reasons I'm much less active than I used to be. Because the thing is, as I've learned a number of times, you never really know who's watching. I had a recent general meeting with 2 pretty notable producers, and one of them also knew who I was from Reddit, where I used to post quite a bit. I'd never met him before, and I found myself praying that everything that he'd seen there had reflected well on me. One of the stars in Aftermath told me that he'd been watching my YouTube when we met on set.
No, please don't say that.
It was a great reminder to always be conscious of what I'm putting out there. Then again, Aftermath probably wouldn't have gotten made if I hadn't posted about my Blacklist 8 all over social media. I signed with my current manager because of a referral from somebody who'd followed me on Reddit and Instagram. I'd never met him before, and he reached out to make the intro, and now we're good friends. I'm talking to a writer right now whose scripts I studied as an up-and-comer, about working together on a co-write, which is an insane thing to say, and we connected because of Twitter. So truly, social media can be a great tool, just be aware that you never know who's watching. When you do finally get reads from reps and producers, they may ask you to sign a release form. This is not uncommon and it's not scary. It just protects them in the event that they're already working on something similar to your script. There have been too many examples of writers claiming theft when it was just simple parallel development, which happens all the time. That doesn't mean that they're out there to steal your idea. You should make sure to read every release and contract and just ensure that its terms make sense to you. But if it's a reputable company or person, I almost always sign them, and if not, I may just choose not to send the script. So, you've gotten some read requests, you've sent out your script, and you cannot wait to hear what they think, but they're not getting back to you nearly as quickly as you'd like. That's the norm. These people have dozens of scripts on their plate, and their primary job is probably not reading yours. It's gonna take some time. So, should you follow up? Absolutely. Personally, I like 3 weeks to a month as a time frame. At the very least, I want 3 weekends to pass because weekends are often when people read. 2 weeks is definitely too few, but I also don't want them to forget about me, so waiting longer than a month has always felt a little long. I like to send a quick email that says, hey, I hope you're well, just wanted to check in and see if you've read XYZ, looking forward to your thoughts. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Most of the time, they'll reply back that they haven't had a chance, but they're looking forward to reading. Some might not respond at all. If they don't respond, unfortunately, that's a pass. Rejection is the most common response you'll get, especially with your early scripts, but it never actually stops. A-list writers get rejections every day. And because it's just part of our world, we shouldn't take it personally, but it's hard not to after pouring so much of ourselves into our work. I can't tell you how many hundreds of passes I've had at this point, but there have been a ton of them, and quite often you don't even hear back at all. People don't like to say no in this business, and so they often just don't say anything, and it sucks, and it also is what it is. But your skin does get tougher. Rejections do get easier over time. Even if they still sting a little, you begin to learn that they're just part of the process. So embrace it and don't let the fear of it get in your way. Also, rejection doesn't mean that you're not any good. Most reps only sign a few new clients a year. Most producers only make a few movies a year. They may not know what they're looking for until they see it, but they are definitely looking for something specific. If they pass on your script, it doesn't mean that they didn't like it. It just means that it wasn't for them. It is important to interrogate whether there's more work to be done on our scripts, but at some point we do have to call them done. And at that point, the only thing that we can do is to keep sending it out and to keep writing new material. The more you write and the more people you meet, the more at-bats you get. It's why I've talked so much about tenacity and that long-term mindset. It only takes one yes to get some real momentum behind a project. That really is the truth. And also, something that I've learned over and over again is that if one person in the industry loves your script, more will too. Remember, Aftermath broke me into this business 2 times, 9 years apart from each other. And ultimately, even though the movie that resulted isn't exactly what I wrote, it did become a movie and it launched my career. And for that reason alone, every bit of work and rejection along the way was worth it. And so my hope is that if you found a love for this, you'll also stick with it and get that experience of walking onto a set and seeing hundreds of people working on something that started with your imagination and getting to see your name on screen. So that's it. That's the 15th and final class of Delusional, and you have just 2 assignments to do before you're finished. I hope you feel that it's been worth this very big investment of your time, and I hope you're super proud of the work that you've done. And if you've stuck with it and done all the assignments, I'm not blowing smoke here. I have a serious amount of respect for you. That kind of thing is not easy to do. This is just the beginning of your journey. There's always more to learn, but you are starting out with a very strong foundation, and you should have some confidence in that. Like I said at the beginning, this is a graded course, so if you've finished your script, take a minute to grade yourself. If you've completed your first draft, give yourself 60 points right off the bat. If you completed your short script, give yourself another 5 points. You should have read 12 scripts during the course. For each one that you read, you get 2.5 points, up to a total of 30. Finally, if you sent out messages in an attempt to set up a coffee, a Zoom, or a phone call, regardless of whether or not those meetings actually happened, give yourself a final 5 points. Now, this is an honor system thing, but if you scored above a 90, you get to do something special. Go to the video for class 0 and in the comments, write the word finisher. Below that, drop your name, your script's title, and any information about it or you that you'd like to include. The genre, the logline, your email address, and your bio are all welcome there if you like. It's totally up to you. That's the first place where you get to promote the hard work that you've done. And hopefully it's the first of many. And I promise you I will read every single one of those comments. One final note, that grading part was meant to be a motivator. If you've missed a couple assignments or you don't finish your script by the end of this 15 weeks, as long as you finish it, you should still feel really great about yourself. But remember, this course is not actually free. You are paying yourself. This is an investment in you. So finish that script and do those last assignments. The other cost of this course is to pay it forward. If you got something out of it, like the video and share the course with others and tell me about your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear what you thought. But also, I've got another ask here. A big part of why I created this was because I believe in mentorship in the arts, and I've seen just a little bit of a trend away from this over the years as we become increasingly focused on ourselves and on monetizing every last thing that we can. Money's not a bad thing, it's just not the only thing. And my hope is that you'll take some of the ethos of this course with you and pay that forward as you experience your own growth. You don't need to do something as insane as investing hundreds of hours into a course that you don't charge for, but I hope you'll have the occasional coffee with a new writer, or read the occasional script for one, or give the occasional referral when it's warranted. That's the kind of thing that improves our community, and there's a purity to it and a gratification that comes from it that isn't there when money's involved. Anyway, that's it. Let's get into your last couple assignments. First of all, if you haven't already, finish that draft. Second, set actionable writing goals for your next 12 months. These should be things that you have total control over. I don't love the idea of setting time-oriented goals around things that require the action of another person, such as getting a manager or selling a script. Those are great long-term goals, but they can be demoralizing if you set a deadline for them. But I'm a huge fan of goals like writing 30 minutes a day, or doing 3 rewrites on your current script, or writing the first draft of another. Last but not least, after you finish, rest and celebrate. Do something special to mark this incredible achievement. Do not skip this step. And finally, now that you're finished, in the description of this video is a link to a delusional shirt and mug designed specifically for finishers of this course. There is zero obligation here, but you've earned the right to them if you'd like to mark the occasion that way. And I don't advertise these anywhere else. So if you ever see somebody wearing them, you can bet that there's somebody who's putting the work in. And if I ever spot you with them, you better believe I'll say hi. Thank you so much for being part of this. If you found this helpful or ever have any success down the road, I hope you'll let me know. Until then, happy writing.